Awesome. Welcome to the GoSquad podcast series, Adwoa. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate, you've given us your time. The GoSquad podcast series is done with an intention to understand what the future of learning is. Also, it's done with the intention to have conversations with educational leaders like you, that we excavate these insights, which really going to define what the future of learning holds for us. So thank you for joining us today. Welcome again to the GoSquad podcast series, Chalk Between the Lines.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be
Amazing,
here.
amazing. Adwoa, there's a lot that's been happening late, especially post 2022. It's really an interesting time to be alive in as well, and trying to witness this historic moment of how technology is taking shape. Which is why I think it's really becomes interesting to have these conversations with education leaders like you. But before we can dive into that entire angle, would love to hear about yourself, where you're coming from, and just everything about you.
Well, I'm Canadian and I've been in the international education for the past 16 years. So I started my education journey in the UK, then I moved to the UAE, and I have been here for the last 14 years. I am currently a vice principal at a charter school in Elaine, in middle and secondary school. So yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Would love to understand, the origins of, you entering into the education space, and how did that begin, and what kindled your interest towards pedagogy, education, schools, and the entire education sector. Would love to know that.
Well, I kind of stumbled on it on purpose and by accident as well. When I was a teenager, I used to volunteer in primary schools. In Canada, we had co-op, so I did co-op in elementary schools, and I also did it in the law school. So when I went to university, I did my first degree in law and history. And in the middle of my degree, told my parents I wanted to go into education. They were like, "What? What are you talking about?" I went to teachers college. I went into education. I went into the education to be an agency for students. Growing up, it's really important that when somebody says, it's really important that when students have a representation of themselves and they see themselves within the classroom. I didn't really see a representation of me in the classroom. Growing up in inner city Toronto, I thought that it was really important to have students that can see somebody that represents them. So it's kind of like, nowadays students use the excuse like, you don't know me, you don't understand me. But if they have somebody that looks like them, or somebody that comes from the same background as them, that has made the evolution of making something of themselves, then they can't use it as the excuse as, you don't know me and you don't know where I come from or my struggles. So I kind of went into education because I wanted to be a representation for people that look like me, women, young girls, people of color. So I just kind of stumbled into the international education because I couldn't really find a job in Canada. So I left, and then because I was like, the more I wait, the less I'm going to have the experience of an educator. And being in education is not like any other job. Like if you have too many gaps, then you're missing a lot of pedagogies. You're missing a lot of strategies that you need to implement within the classroom. So yeah, that's how my international journey began. And I went into leadership because I was like, I have a lot to learn, and I can teach other teachers and empower teachers to be the best of themselves and to give their fully. I don't know it 100%, but I'm in the middle where I am helping teachers grow to be their best for our students, but I'm also learning from the leaders to also become a good leader for the teachers and for the students as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think that journey in itself, would have been so rewarding, right?
Yeah.
From the experiences back in Canada, I'm assuming, and then then taking over to, really trying to understand that gap, and then moving on to education and then education leadership. That's really phenomenal to hear.
Thank you.
It's just would love to understand which school did you start with, and how was that journey? And could you tell us about, where, you work at, and how is education there?
Well, I started off at a school in the UK in South London called St. Francesca Cabrini. I did a long-term supply there. It was a Catholic school, had like 27 students. It was kind of like a culture shift for me, coming from Canada. Just the little nuances, like the certain phrases, like I would say sweater, they would say jumper. I learned a lot within that 10 months that I was there. And in my second long-term experience, I ended up in a school that is called Beecroft Primary. And I taught a year four class of
Sorry to
23.
interject. The first school, like, when was that? Like, how many years back that was that?
The first school I was there for from September till July, from September 2009 till July 2010. And then the second school I was there from September 2010 to July 2011. So I did my 2 years. First foundation of teaching in the UK. I learned a lot. I think that's where I became a like what's the word that I became a confident teacher. That's the word. Because
Oh,
I ended up in when I was in Beecroft, I ended up in a school where it unfortunately it became a special measures school. So when we did our Ofsted inspection, we failed. But that was a blessing in disguise because we had people come into the school that helped us plan, helped us sort of our curriculum. So I had a mentor that really helped me understand the British curriculum even more. And that experience, it doesn't matter what curriculum it is, pedagogy is pedagogy. You can take those experience and apply it in any curriculum. So it made me become a really confident teacher. And that's how I fell in love with curriculum, breaking down the standards, breaking down the skills, and scaffolding the skills for the children to understand what resources are you going to use when you look at the data of your students that are not progressing. What can you do to make sure that you move them along and that they make progress? Sometimes they might not necessarily make progress against the benchmark, but they make the individual progress. And that's what also sometimes in education we forget because we're always looking at the benchmark and where are they not meeting the benchmark. But sometimes children also make their personal growth. So that experience literally shaped me and gave me my foundation and my love for curriculum building. And then I came to Abu Dhabi and then I was at Adnoc schools for 10 years. And that school, I grew within that school for 10 years as well, where I found leaders that were mentors, recognized my strength, and then they helped me shape and develop my love for curriculum.
wow. I think that's been a journey. It's
Yeah, it
been
has.
almost like
16
15,
years.
16 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a long
Yeah,
time.
it has.
And how has it been like in terms of how are students back in 2009 versus 2025? Has there, I'm sure like there must have been like different shifts in terms of how students learned and how students interacted with the teachers. Was there like a seismic shift, like, over the years?
I mean, for me, I don't think so much has changed. I think what has actually been more implemented more is the technology aspect of it. But the skills are still the same that we need to change them. But the resources that we need to use have kind of shift a little bit more like there's more technology, there's more resources that you can use to embed to teach the students the curriculum. But children are still the same. I think before anything, in order for kids to give you what it is that you need to build relationships with them. So when certain teachers are saying, oh, this student is not getting it, it's like, well, are you building relationship with the kids? Because if you're not building relationship with your students, then you're not going to get what is best for them because they need to build a trust with you. They need to know that you care about them first, right? So, and that's the thing that I always tell my teachers before the year begins. Take the time to get to know the kids because some of the kids, when they walk in the building, the first thing they want to know is, hey, what I do when I first work in the building, I see a child at 7 o'clock in the morning. Good morning. How are you? Have you had breakfast? What did you eat for breakfast? For example, 2 days ago, one of my students said he ate cornflakes. I'm like, what kind of cornflakes? He's like, the one with the sugar. So I was like, are you going to be shaking like this? And he started laughing. 2 minutes, just 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes out of the day, just to make sure that the child sees you impacts how the day is going to go for the child and their learning. So before the curriculum, before anything, just building relationship with the students and making sure that you have their well-being at the front of it all makes a huge difference in terms of how the day is going to go, how the month is going to go, how the academic year is going to go. So regardless of anything that's happening, regardless of the shift, I think also right now, the biggest shift is on well-being of the students, right? Student well-being in terms of their mental health and in terms of their physical health and in terms of even the nutrition, what they put in their body and what they eat in the forefront. So right now, even here, it's very big on the forefront of the well-being of the students within the classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about when you were talking about how you asked the student what kind of conflicts did you have today. I could just visualize like how that student would have been like, oh, I am valued and I'm important as well. And there's some meaning to my coming to the school every day. And as opposed to like when students just come to school and without just being asked by any of the teachers that what's happening in their life or what are they, just that simple question, what kind of conflicts did you have?
Yeah,
I think just, conveys so much of meaning to that child. So
definitely.
it's really interesting. I mean, I think this human relationships, building that human relationship. And I think it also comes with, teachers being emotionally intelligent. I was recently having a conversation with one of the heads of schools in Lisbon, and he was saying that, how it is becomes so important in terms of, like building that relationship and how he stands outside the school every day in the morning and just waves hands at at the students just so that they feel valued and feel important. And apparently he tells to his teachers that I can teach you to teach, but I cannot teach you to care. No.
Definitely, definitely. Like my principal and I, we do duties in the morning. My in the morning and in the afternoon. His duty is the front of the school in the morning. My duty is at the car riders in the morning and in the afternoon. So everybody has to be out and be present to greet the children. You can't just be sitting in the office. The parents also want to see that you care about their children. You know what I mean? So we all do duty at my school. We do morning duty, we do lunch duty, we do after school duty. So even within those points, if the children want to talk to you or anything like that, they can find you to have conversations with you. So it's really, really important that you like, regardless of how technology is or how anything is coming, who's at the other end that you're communicating with? Another human being, right? So all these tools that we make is making it easier for us to communicate with each other. I mean, sometimes we get distracted with the apps and all of that, but ultimately everything is created so we can enhance our human conversation and our human connection. So why would you not do that to the children that you see only 15% of their 100% lives, right? So it's really important that regardless of what you're teaching them, what project you have, because I always tell the teachers, you can spend hours to plan the best lessons that you can. But if you do not have relationship with the kids and they do not trust you, you cannot ask them to give you your best. And it goes for everything in life. So I think that's where people tend to forget that all of that comes into play in every aspect that you have in your life. Relationships matter, right? Yeah.
And I just wanted to like, get to the roots of, why emotion or like human relationships were so important for him. The same director that I was talking about from Lisbon. And he asked me this question, more like rhetorical question, like who's your favorite teacher like back in school, and how many years has it been like since you graduated from school? Like it's been almost like 15 years since I graduated high school, and the geography teacher comes to my mind. I think she's really special. And then he asked me, why do you think so? Do you remember what qualification did she have? I said, no, I don't, but I just remember how she made me feel, and which is why I still remember her to this day. And like you said, it's so important to build that relationship
I mean,
angle.
yeah, it's very important.
Yeah, and just moving forward, I'm sure, like, you being one of the educational leaders at Bloom Education, you could just think of so many things happening in a given day for an educational leader, right? Right from, like being focused on the students to teachers. It's so many aspects to, what comes in about like running an institution and the threats related to that as well. How do you balance that, by being emotionally how does that work out for you?
Well, I've been a vice principal for this is my fourth academic year as a vice principal, but my third year. I'm learning. It takes balance. I think this year I'm getting it right. But I mean, sometimes I have a list of stuff down. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But as soon as you walk in and something happens, like if safeguarding issue happens, I'm not going to stick to my list. I have to tend to the safeguarding. So it's all about the priorities of what it is that you lead. Like I was leading safeguarding and teaching and learning last year. This year, another VP has been appointed to take over the safeguarding, which I'm working alongside with him as well. But you have to prep. But sometimes you might have your to-do list and another emergency comes and that emergency takes a hold of it. But I've been fortunate enough to have an amazing principal. He's been in the field for 30 years and he just moved to the UAE and he's like a principal here in the UAE. And he's always like, you need to have your plan, but you also make sure that you leave time in to make sure that if something happens, you have time cut out for the gap. So within the day, I don't fill out my whole time with everything. Maybe I might list like 4 or 5 major to do things that are due within the next couple of weeks. I might probably get to 2 on that day, but I had the rest of the week to make sure that that target is set. And every day you get an email, and every day something else is more important than that. And you have to kind of push it along the line. But I think one of the things is that, yes, you have your priority list, you have your KPI, you have your SDPs that you must follow and make sure that you have the plans. Yes, you have the plan, but ultimately, sometimes in any given day, you just have to prepare that something is going to happen. And that will take a burnout, because that right there is the priority.
Yeah, absolutely, right. Can imagine like there's so much that happens just like in every given day, and at the same time to balance it out with what being emotionally present. It makes me think about like so much that happens at your end, and what's that one thing that people misunderstand about your role?
A lot of people think that you just sit there and drink coffee and it's just all fun. But to be honest, like my immediate team that I work with, like my middle leaders, they know, because they've come along the journey. Like last year, they were at the point where I'm like, you kind of have to grow into your role and take more ownership and make sure that you lead your team, as opposed to me always leading, because it doesn't look right, because it will look like it's just a one-man show. So you have to empower the people, your middle leaders as well. So they see the hard work and the grounds and the foundation that we lay. But I think on people on the outside, they might think, oh, she just gets up, gets her hair done, and goes to sit in the office and drinks coffee. But on a day to day, no, it's not, because there's you have to do the school development. The school have to do the school set. You have to work with your principal to make sure that the strategic plan, the governance. We have inspections, not just ERDICA inspections. We also have our internal blooms inspection that we get used to, because obviously they want to make sure that they are coming in there and they're being supportive. And that's one of the things I like about the process that we have. Our director, amazing man, he brought a system in called the SSF, where they come in, they work with you, they work together. This is going great. This is amazing. Okay, these are the areas that we need to work together. How can we support your school to make sure that we're moving you along onto the right track? So you also have to plan for that. You have to make sure that you have your student council. You work with your pastoral team to make sure that the student council is developed. You make sure that the parent council is developed. You make sure that your staff well-being. So there's so many aspects that you work as a school leader, that if you are not in there and you're just looking at it from the surface, you just think, just get up and go sit in the office, drink coffee. On a every day to day, it's like, I don't know if you've ever seen a show called Albert Elementary. Like the principal, she just sits there and doesn't do anything, but people think that's what it is. But really, you go in there on any given day, you have to make sure that people, like, in a day, you might have 3 English teachers call in the same grade level that are absent. You have to make sure that there's cover for the students to teach those maybe 30 periods that they're not going to be there. You have to struggle with your team, make sure that you have the teachers in there, but to make sure that you have the people in there to cover duty, you have to make sure, because safeguarding is the number one priority. You have to make sure that there is an adult that is in there with the kids all the time. So it's kind of like running any other business or any household. Just picture being a single parent or a parent that has 30 kids at a time in one classroom, or you run a business. Like our school, we have like almost 100 teachers. So imagine you have 6 SLT members and you have to manage almost 100 teachers, plus your support staff, plus, so it's a lot. It's a lot to juggle. And it takes time to grow into it. You, like, when you start an SLT position, if you've never been there, the first year is always learning. And I think a lot of people beat themselves up for it, because like, oh, I don't get it. But it's a learning growth, and you grow along with the position as well. So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to rumble
Amazing.
on.
Music. It's almost like an orchestra happening every
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
cool, right?
yeah,
And then you need to make sure that things go according to plan,
yeah,
they keep flowing seamlessly, and so on and so forth, which
yeah.
makes the job really interesting.
But our team is amazing. Like for me, I've been blessed to have a great team. I mean, we gel together. We work really hard together. So if there's anything, it's not just one person. So we have 6 SLT members. We have 11 MLTs for teaching and learning. We have 14 MLTs for pastoral. So we have a lot of support system, but you have to be organized. So if the top is not organized, the whole show is going to go. The whole bottom is going to crumble, right? So our SLT team, you have to get along, and we do. There are times where we agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, the core is the students. Like, what we're deciding, is it right for all the 1,000+ students that come through our door? Is this what is best for our students? Are we making sure that making this decision, are we within the policies that we're making the decision? And ultimately, does it serve our students? Like, you can't think about it as in, oh, this is what I want. It's not about you. It's about what is good for the children that they are in our care for these amount of months, for these amount of years, until they graduate or until they move on to the next set in their education field.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Adwoa, it's been almost more than a decade, like you being in the education space. If you were to like think about it, or rather like jog your memory, what's that one special moment that you had in your entire educational journey that stands out to you, which you'd love to share with our listeners?
Okay, so remember I told you I taught in the UK. I taught my first school, St. Francesca Cabrini. There was one student named Victor. So maybe a year ago, a year or two ago, I barely go on Facebook, but he found me on Facebook and he was like, "Hey, Miss Appiah, do you remember me, Victor?" I was like, "Of course I remember you, Victor, because you used to sit in front of the class and, go on and on." Lovely, smart young man. And then I was like, "Oh, where are you now?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm in Manchester. I just graduated from law school." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I feel so old." But just like I have I had, like, when you were talking about that one teacher that made a difference in your life, I have that one teacher that I still call. He's retired in Canada, and I still call him. Like, when I got my VP position, I was like, "Oh my God, Mr. C, I got my VP position." He's like, "I'm really proud of you, kiddo." So just to have that 360 and have a student look for you, and like, because this was 2009, like I taught him for 10 months. 10 months, I
And
wasn't
he
a
remembered
and
you.
he remembered me. And the fact that he remembered my name and found me on Facebook, I was like, "Oh, that to me, I was like, that's actually a cool thing." And then one of my students that I taught here, I'll never forget this young lady. She is currently in Abu Dhabi University, in NYU Abu Dhabi University. He literally made a point and found me on Instagram. She's like, "Oh my God, Miss, do you remember me?" I'm like, of course I remember you, because you're my one Emirati student that was, her English was impeccable and her Arabic, she was struggling. So me and her mom and dad, I'm like, "How is this possible that her English is so impeccable and she's struggling in Arabic?" Normally it's the other way around. But just the fact that your students will go back and look for you. And yeah, that to me, that gave me, like, maybe a little bit teary, I'm not gonna lie. And also another thing is that for me, education is really important. So I never stopped learning. As after I got my teaching degree, I went back and I did a special needs part one subjects because I had special needs kids in my class. I need to know how to service them. So for me, it's like, I'm also learning in education as well. Like, I'm always making sure that I know what I'm doing I'm at my best in order to serve the students that are coming. I might not know everything, which is fine, but as an educator, I never stop learning. But those two are very pinnacle in my education,
That's
in my
that's
education
beautiful.
journey. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Rajvir, just to jump into, like the recent times, and there's a lot that's going on at the moment, right? In terms of how education is, like learning at blitzscaling speeds and how students are learning. Would just love to hear your thoughts about, post 2022 November. I think that was a historic time because when you look back, it took about, I think, 100, it took about, I think, 100 million users of the telecom industry, right? It took 75 years for 100 million users to be part of the telecom industry. Then it took about 7 years for 100 million users to start using the internet, right? And when ChatGPT came about, it just took 2 months for about 100 billion users. And that was fascinating. And by that extension, I think students have adopted, AI as one of their most closest tools. Just, would love to hear your broader thoughts, and listeners would love to understand, like, what have your experiences been on that front?
Before I start, I'm not against AI. I think is a good tool, regardless of how we feel about it as educators, whether we're traditional educators or for it. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's either you evolve with it or you get left behind. That's just
I
what it
love that.
is. Yeah, like, it is what it is. It's evolution of time. The biggest problem is the kids don't know how to use it. They use it to plagiarize. They use it to cheat. I mean, Yeah, so that's the another handle that we need to, as educators, that we need to educate the kids on how to use technology. But that doesn't mean that the curriculum goes away. You embed the curriculum with technology. I still think teaching kids how to critically think, how to evaluate things is still important, because if you don't teach them how to evaluate things, how can they use the technology properly? So yeah, it's been difficult, because some kids think that, oh, let me just go on Chat GPT and type this up and hand it in. And we've had a lot of conversations with our secondary students. Our middle school students, not so much. I think elementary, but the high school has been really challenging. I think maybe even on the college level, where students will probably go and type the topic in and just hand in a plagiarized text, where they don't know, because they still don't think that they need those skills to be writing papers. They still need those skills to be doing the calculation of text. So embedding it, yes, but it's not going anywhere. So we need to find a way where it's going to be used properly. And that's the way that we're working on it. Like in our schools, sometimes we have to block some of the apps, because when we're doing like an assessment that has to use technology, some of the kids, they find a way to come out of the browser, go and copy and paste some of the answers. And some of them, we had to call their parents in and be like, hey, it's against the UAE law as well, that plagiarizing and cheating is against the law. Like, you have to show them the law. So I think we have to really educate our kids. Like, it's not a bad thing, but you can't use it to do your work for you, because it's not your work, right? So it's kind of like, I know some people are like totally against it. Like, oh my God, AI. I'm not against it. I think we just need to teach the kids how to use it properly.
Listen, I think, yeah, I think really interesting what you said about, the three categories of, students, elementary, middle, and high school.
Mhm.
It's the high school students that use a lot of AI at the moment, as opposed to like, elementary school. And yeah, do you think, like when you say that, um, students have been using it for assessments, is that like a sign at the moment, or signal to us, shouting at us in bolder words that maybe assessments need to change?
Well, I mean, I think maybe a couple of days ago, the UAE Ministry of Education just banned all mobile phones in schools, right? No,
Can
like, yeah, yeah,
can you
yeah.
repeat that again?
I think just a couple of days ago, the Ministry of Education just banned mobile phones in schools. Like, students are not
Oh,
allowed to have mobile phones in schools. Yeah, yeah,
that's news to me.
yeah. It's great for me, because the law came out, I think, last year. And I would, if I find students with mobile phones, I take it away the first time, I give it to the parents. They bring it back the second time, I take it away for a month. If they bring it back the third time, I keep it for the whole academic year. I still have some mobile phones in my desk at work from last academic year. So, I mean, because it is distracting, it distracts them. I do, to be honest, I do think that there are certain ways that we need to do away of the way how we do assessments. I think we need to start thinking more now. Like, for example, some of my students are taking robotics in high school as an elective, and they're taking financial literacy. So we had a conversation with our financial literacy teacher. So when I was in high school, I never got a chance to take financial literacy. This is a chance for the children to be taking financial literacy, because it's important for them to know about money and managing money. So when they're adults, they're not struggling with how to. So don't use a textbook to teach them. Ask them how many of them have an account. Okay, which account do you have? Let's get somebody that works in the bank to come in. Everything should be a problem based for them, so they can solve it. I'm like, you would be surprised how many children have more of the answers. But if you don't give them the answers to build their questions to build their critical thinking skills, how are we preparing them for the workforce? Because who's ever gone into a workforce and done exams? It's problems that we have to solve. That's why people hire us, to solve the problems, not to go write exams. So I think we kind of do, in some subjects, there are some, we need to change the structure of how we assess students' knowledge.
Yeah, I think, in 2022, it was so fascinating to see like there's this application that's just giving you answers to everything, or at least attempting to give answers to everything, with at times with a bit of hallucinations and all of that. But that made me think, okay, if AI is able to do everything, like literally, it's almost like a wannabe polymath at that time,
Yeah.
right? And it's trying to answer all questions. Then if AI can do everything, what does it not do, right? And can we teach that to children? Because what is the point of then going to schools if AI is able to do everything? That like, bothered me for a bit. And essentially that was the birth of GoSquad, which is a cinematic engine for learning. But yes, I think uh, would love to hear your thoughts, Adwoa. Like, if AI today, right, is able to do almost everything, it's just that we are moving from this transition. Rather, we've moved from generative AI to agentic AI. And agentic AI, as you know, like, you drop in a task, select tasks for the day, you go to the beach side and just have a good time until the evening, come back. Maybe your agentic AI would like prompt you for some direction, but by the end of the day, like everything is just done, right? So people like Reid Hoffman, like the CEO of LinkedIn, I think the founder of LinkedIn. So he was saying that how knowledge work is going to be dead by 2030. And I'm like, if knowledge work is going to be dead by 2030 and there's going to be this massive reshuffle of work, right? What do children need to think about? Like, what's next for them?
I mean, I really think that in some way he is right, because if some of the work AI can do it for you, why would you want to hire a human being? But at the same time, I always go back to things we need to teach children how to think and to question their thinking. AI, like if the computer, I always tell my students, if you come home today and your laptop is dead and all of this is this, what are you going to do? You have to go back to the traditional. So yes, the skills, they need to learn the skills still. It doesn't matter whether AI is evolving or not. I think critical thinking skills, collaboration skills, all of that learning skills still needs to be learned, because regardless if AI is going to do the work, you need to collaborate with somebody. But if you don't have collaboration skills, if you don't have self-management skills, if you don't have literacy skills, how are you going to do all of that? Because a child can't get up and say, I'm just going to teach myself how to read. Like, I'm going to teach them. They got to teach the sounds. They have to learn
Right.
the fluency. They have to, you get what I mean? Like on an educational level, they still need the fundamental to do that. So in order to get to the fundamentals, you need to build them up in that gap.
Absolutely.
Yes, there are some jobs that AI is going to take over, and that's what I see. As adults, we need to also evolve as AI evolves, right? Because if you don't evolve and also find yourself a new skill, then you are going to be unemployed in that aspect. But at the same time, with children in school, they need to learn. Unless parents want to homeschool their kids, there are some parents that choose to homeschool their children and teach them all those skills. But let's be realistic, how many parents are really going to do that? Because at the end of the day, AI can be there, all of that. It's not going away. We know that. But they still need to know the fundamentals of education. They do. Because if you don't know your sounds, you don't know your letters, you can't blend, you don't know the 5 components of comprehension, you don't know the 5 elements of math problem solving. I mean, you were mentioned that an AI app can give you the answers. But how did you get the answers? Because when you're doing mathematical, it's not so much about how you got the answer. It's about what steps did you use to get the answer. And if you got the answer wrong, then you need to go back into the steps, right? Because it's all about systematic. So if you don't have those strategies, how are you going to make it? All those fundamental skills are needed in order for you to be successful using the AI app. Because I always tell my staff, I'm like, it's all great that you want to use Chat GPT and Magic School, but what is your thinking behind it? You can't just say, give me a learning plan for this. What is the end goal that you want your children to know? Because if you know your end goal, you'll be able to prompt the AI engineering tool to be like, hey, this is the end goal that I need. These are the resources that I have. How can you make it interactive for me? But if you don't have that thinking in your head, you won't be able to get that result. You only just get a generic one, and then it will just be a surface to only 1/3 of your students got the objective, but the rest of them were not able to do the work. Same thing, right? So it's all about having the fundamental skills and
Yeah.
pedagogy. Yeah.
Like it reminds me about how, domain knowledge, right? Domain knowledge and domain intuition. Like if you become really good at one particular subject in your life, then you go on to develop like domain intuition, right? And with that intuition, when you start, collaborating with a tool like AI, then the returns are going to be exponential, right? And I think you're absolutely right on that 100%, where these building blocks are so important. Like without them, I think it just becomes surface level. It's
Yes.
almost like when I'm interacting with these tools, right? I realize that when you ask a tier 1 question, you get a tier one answer
Yes.
because the AI understands that, oh, this is a tier one person. Maybe I can't give this person a tier three answer. They won't be able to like absorb it. Because of your domain knowledge and your domain intuition that you've developed, you ask a tier six question, you get a tier six answer, and then you have the ability to interpret that answer as well.
Exactly.
So like, I think that that's solid when you say that, okay, it's fantastic. AI is there, but who's going to build that domain knowledge for, for students? It's really, like I recently came across this company called Kafka AI,
Hmm.
and it's really interesting that they recently got funded by YC, Y Combinator, and 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 they're a company where you can go onto the platform and hire AI agents for your work. It's almost like they're saying that to not hire humans, you can hire an AI agent and they do every work for you.
Oh, wow.
And you see, you start seeing that the shift that's happening.
Hmm.
2030 is not too far in that sense. I know we've touched that a bit, but would love to hear your thoughts on what kind of a learner do you think the world needs now?
The world needs a critical thinking learner. The world needs learners that can collaborate because regardless of what AI, like I'm thinking outside of the AI world, because when you step out of the AI world, you still need to be able to have in-depth conversation. You also need to have a learner that can solve problems. You might not necessarily get the answer, but the fact that they're questioning how they can solve the problems and coming up with different ways to solve the problems. That's what we need. I think more and more in education, we're gearing towards building critical thinking learners, giving students problems that they can solve together. Because right now in our school, we're really working on enhancing and really growing the students' learning skills, how they can collaborate together. Because when you collaborate, you need to also make sure that there's a leader within the team. There's a note taker within that team. There is a questioner within that team. There's a presenter within that team because regardless of what's going on, the children need to learn how to work together. Because, I mean, our demographic, most of our students want to go into being a police officer. So they need to learn those skills, right? Even if they want to be doctors, you need to be able to collaborate because when you are in the emergency room, even if it's AI, then whatever AI world, whoever is developing those AI engineering database in the background, they still need to collaborate, right? One of my students can be one of those people that are developing those AI tools for them, but they still need to be able to collaborate with each other. We still need to be able to critical think because how did AI come about? Because somebody was thinking about it. That's how it came. We need to develop children to think outside the box and be inventors and problem solvers, right? Not somebody else giving them all the answers. Because if one day we all wake up and then everything is shut down, we all still need to come back to our human instinct. So those are the type of skills that we still need to develop within our kids. We need to teach our children to be able to self-regulate and be self-responsible, to be time manage themselves. Because as you grow, as you know, as teenagers, you lack those. And if you don't build those skills, it is going to be a hindrance for you to get to where you need to go, regardless whether there's technology or not. Right. So those are skills that still needs to be embedded, whether it be, and then those are skills that we teach the kids to be able to develop year after year after year after year. So we're very, very big right now on teaching the kids the critical thinking skills, teaching the students on the learning skills, making sure that they can collaborate with each other, making sure that they can solve problems together, and also their well-being as well. So all of that and components of it makes up the students. I mean, and then you integrate it with the AI because when they go home, we all know they're there playing the video games, they're there doing all that. But when they are within our realm, we want to make sure that we give them the tools that they can keep thinking about it and let them know that it's not just for school, but also start using it out in the real world because those are the fundamentals that they need in order for them to make it. Because sometimes a lot of kids they leave school and they get into college or university and they're struggling because those skills are not embedded properly for them to get used to the academia of the first year of what it is that you're doing. Because regardless, if you go to school and you want to do robotics and you want to do engineering, you still need to have those skills.
Absolutely. For some reason, like Charlie Brown, like a book, Jane Eyre. It's a classical English fiction book.
Mhm.
It's essentially about love story, basically. about Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is this young orphan child, and basically because her mom and dad passed away,
Yeah.
so she's been left in the care of her uncle, right? And uncle passes away, and then she's then left with, her aunt. Aunt Reed is basically this, she's partial towards her kids, and then she's kind of putting Jane through a lot of problems,
Yes.
right? And until one moment, she has this catharsis moment where she's she's screaming out, but she's full in tears at the same time. She's a 6-year-old child, and then she says to Aunt Reed that, as a child, I don't know, I feel something, but I'm not able to articulate it to you,
Yeah.
right? And deep down, she feels that partiality, and that made me think. Okay, students, like even though they're younger, they feel so many things, and maybe they're not able to articulate, but it's the role of the teacher to, or the entire school to understand what the student is going through, or like what are the global shifts that are affecting the child as well. I was just tying this back to this phenomenon of AI, right? And it got to a point where each and every student like realize that they have this polymath in their pockets, right? And they can get an answer to every question out there, right? And maybe they come to school, and I'm just like inclined to think. And do you think they might be thinking that, oh, I know like the teacher is teaching me something, but if I wanted, I could find the answer. And yeah, like, no, definitely we cannot deny the human element. Like, I think students would get bored at home, like staying
Mhm.
for months together. They will come to school, and schools and teachers are not going to get replaced at all, right? But do you think like somewhere down they feel that maybe education could be something different, or should be something different at the moment?
I mean, some of the kids do feel like that. They're like, "Oh, I have the answer," but I'm always like, "Okay, well, how'd you get the answer? What is the answer? Like, forget about what are the steps that you use to get the answer?" Because that's my thing. That's great that you have the answer. How did you get there? You can't tell me that you got it from the internet or the calculator. Then that's not your answer. That's somebody else's answer. I need you to tell me how you got there. Yeah, there are some kids that feel that way. And I think the onus is not only just on the schools itself, because if you look at the 24 hours in the kid's life, they're only, or like, if you look at in the whole year, the child's only at school at 15%, 20% the most, right? So that's where the home and school connection comes in. Because if there is something going on, I mean, I work with boys, so sometimes there are things going on at home that we have to get the parents in to talk about it. But even when I was in elementary school and something was going on, you have to connect with the parents, because at the end of the day, it takes two schools, the household for education, and then there's the household where they grew up in. It takes both in order for the child to thrive, right? So if there is not the home and school connection, it does create an issue, because sometimes parents are dealing with stuff at home that we have no knowledge of, and then it affects the kids. So, but if we do know about it, then we can come up with some sort of a solution to make sure that something is going on at home. Something is, so we can make sure that the kid is stable enough to get there. In terms of AI, unfortunately, we can send memos home to parents, but once the kid gets home and they're in their room with their big screen TV and their laptop and their iPad and their phone, we don't have control over it. We try to educate the parents, and we tell them the use of technology. To be honest, some of the parents don't even know. Some of their parents don't even know about ChatGPT and stuff like that. They know like Instagram and stuff like, because their parents are a bit older, right? And some people view, I think some people view ChatGPT as like the Google. Like if you look at online, some people like, oh, ChatGPT is my friend, and I ask ChatGPT all these questions. Some people use it as they use it as Google. Some people don't see that the need for it, that it does more than just the next Google. So I think it's just about educating the kids about the use of it, what it can be used for. Yes, you can use it, but ultimately it's not the answer for everything, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it was quite tragic. The other day I was reading about, I think it was a student in the UK. I'm not sure about which country, but apparently like was quite affected, and then he was interacting a lot with GPT about how to like end his life.
Mm-hmm.
And like there are a lot many references to suicide by GPT, and I'm not sure about the veracity of the thing that I came across, but essentially, like there are these, you know tragic ways of how one can end up using a GPT. But it goes back to your point of how these major building blocks of pedagogy and education that can only be learned in school, whilst making sure that the human element exists. Like I remember eighth grade, I was learning, I think, algebra or trigonometry at that time. And I go to my teacher and I ask him, why am I even learning this? Like, I know it looks like a puzzle, but can you explain me why am I learning this? And I asked very genuinely because I wanted to know, how does this tie to the real world?
Mhm.
and and I'm not sure I got an answer at that time, but I think that actually like bothered me for a very long time. In fact, like when I think about it today, I so wish I got the why answers, the why behind everything,
Mhm.
especially at least what I was learning with. And I think the last couple of years, the ruminations were, okay, maybe education needs to change, and education today is more like, the set of facts that are being delivered. Of course there's this human element, but but maybe there needs to be something, a shift that needs to take place, which is why I think, we came up with, embedding storytelling into curriculums,
Yep.
and building the first product where, it's about the first cinematic engine for learning, where, essentially like you cinematize lessons and learning. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to, like hear that aspect. Would love to, like understand. You've been again, in the education space for so long. Do you see like, schools by design doing something uh wrong, and maybe that needs to change?
I mean, for our school, our vision is a little bit different because we're catering it towards our students. Like a lot of our students want to go into the military. A lot of our students want to go into police, and our boys want to even go into engineering. So what we do is that we tailor our electives to meet their needs. Like I have a grade 10 student who him and his aunt, they own a restaurant. I mean, we offer business introduction to business course because a lot of the students, their parents, aunts own businesses, so it's good for them to learn the aspects of business. But we also offer entrepreneur, and we felt like financial literacy. It's really important. It doesn't matter whether it's yeah. I think the fundamentals of financial literacy, budgeting your money, knowing how to save, what kind of investments you need. Clearly, so we offer that for the boys. For the first time, we're also offering fitness for life, where they're learning how to be fit because in the UAE after you graduate you go as a man you go to the military, you do military service for 11 months before you can go off to college or university. So we tailor it like one of our boys, they wanted Mandarin, and I told him that we will take a vote, and if he gets majority of the boys to want Mandarin, we'll offer them Mandarin. We tailor it to what the kids need, especially for their electives. Fortunately, like it is what it is that you need a certain amount of credits to graduate to get so you need your 4 sciences, your 4 English, your 4 math, your 4 Arabic, your 4 Islamic. That's how it is around the world. So you need to have that. Geometry, you need geometry because if you ever get into engineering and the building and all that, you need to be able to use your geometry skills for that.
Right.
So I think a lot of schools that are whole school K to 12 or FS to 13, they really tailor their GCSE programs or their electives and their APs based on the student's interest and what the kids want to aspire in the future. So on that aspect, we have that control of that. I mean, education is never going to go away. Education started way before we were even there. So I think is the way that we give the curriculum to the kids. Yes, like I said, AI is not going anywhere. So even like the UAE, they've implemented an AI curriculum, how we have to embed the into the curriculum because it's not going to go anywhere and the kids are going to use it. So we have to find and educate them of a safe way that they can use it within the classroom where they're not plagiarizing, right? Where we can use they can use it to do research instead of you go in a library and look at books. We have the research in the books. Kind of have to tailor it to meet the needs of it to fit in the classroom. That's what we're going to have to do at the meantime. Yeah.
Absolutely. You're like, a student, basically, like most of the times, they're different students with different capacities and interests, right? And they come and, I think, to a teacher, they come and tell over a period of time what they want to become, right? This is what I want to become, this, or that's something I want to become, or I might want to go into this profession. What's like the most common like professions that you've had, and maybe that covers up to like 90 to 95% of what students talk about.
Well, I have because our school currently is all boys school. So I have students that want to go into the military and the police, students that want to be an engineer. Yeah. And then some students that want to be a doctor. So because we offer the math and the sciences, it covers the range for the engineering and all of that. But we also offer computer science, we offer design technology, we offer robotics, we offer fitness for life because they need to do fitness in order for them to go to the police. We have a lot of guest speakers of the police because their family members are in the police, so we have the police come in and talk to them about what the requirement is to get into the police, because when their parents were in the police, it was a different requirement. Now, in order for them to even get into the police force to get an interview, they need to have this was last year, I don't know, it's probably have changed. They need to have an average of 85%, plus their English needs to be proficient in order for them to even get into the police force. So we try and tailor it. We have a career counselor who starts working with them from grade 8. So then he helps them tailor out their path in what they need in order for them to get there. So once we get the data on the pathway that most of it has, then we start offering those courses as an elective.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. So it's these couple of professions that come about in discussions in
Mhm.
school, and also with the counselor. Like the other day, like when I was reading, it was quite it was one of the stats, right? I'm sure like there could be other spooling stats, but it said that there are about like 5 million professions out there. And essentially like, when I have conversations with students, right, they tell that they want to become a doctor, lawyer, an entrepreneur maybe, and then something, I want to become a police or be a part of the government. But it's hard to hear like someone saying that they want to become like, let's say, a marine archaeologist, for example, right?
I know.
And that led me to think about, why does that happen? Essentially, it was the lack of exposure, like on a personal level, right? When I am a trained lawyer, right? I graduated as a lawyer, but at the moment, like I am really passionate about education, right? And that's like kind of different ones, but that I had to go through like a self learning journey.
Yeah.
And it was one of my mentors, one of the days, I think back in law school. It was my third year of law school. He comes to me and then he goes like, here's a book that you're going to read, and we're not talking to each other until you complete this book end to end. That was tough, like, because I really respected him. And yeah, I still remember the next day I went into law school classes. I think there was insurance law that was being thought about. And I had Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers under my desk,
Yeah.
and I read it cover to cover, and that got me addicted to reading, right? And
Mhm.
after that, I think I was just start thinking about, okay, am I just doing law because I happened to like bump into law and someone talked about law, and I was naive back then. And maybe, and have I just made that as a part of my life? Maybe I need to know what exists out there in the world. When I started like exploring different genres, right,
Yeah.
in the world, that's when you realize, okay, the world is so
So
vast, and maybe I'm tunneling at the moment. I need to come outside that Plato's cave, so to
yeah.
speak, and look at the broader world, and then maybe choose, because now you're in this perfect position to choose
Yeah.
what you want to do. I wonder like how can we like break that down, for students in terms of they like, really going through that journey through themselves. I'm sure like definitely helps like when you have a counselor, but it'd also be like interesting to see like if students can go through that journey in their own little world and then, come about.
Yeah, I think every child you ask, they never want to be doctors or lawyers. They want to be like a painter. It's the parents. It's the parents. Like, I mean, I'm an African. My parents are African. So I told, whatever you mean, like a Nigerian or something, like, oh, my parents want me to be a doctor, an architect or something. It's the parents that push you into doing that. So I think from a very young age, kids be like, oh, I got to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer, because those are the 4 pillars that every parent wants their kid to. But we meet some students that want to be like, for example, we have parents that will come in like, oh, why are they taking art? I'm like, well, they can get into art, they can become an architect. Like, I'm like, who do you think builds these buildings? An architect. Like, it becomes from art and all. And so like if a student like for example, here in Abu Dhabi, the Sheikh is really big. He has a program called the Rise program, where he's revitalizing art and bringing art back into the culture, and having like kids go and they present their artwork and they win prizes and stuff like that. So I think they're starting to see like there are different pathways. Even in Dubai, there's a hub where they're trying to do a hub where it's like they go for like engineering, all these cool stuff. I forgot what it's called, but I met a director last week where he was like talking to our schools and having the kids geared their way. There are kids that want to do all of that, but it's not a large majority because the rest of the kids that want to be police officers or they want to go into the military because that's what their parents have done and they look up to their parents. That's what they don't see anything else. So we do broaden their horizon, but some of them is so stuck in their mind that you almost have to leave them to go there. And then like you, they'll find their path. And when they take a pause, they're going to reevaluate and come back. But definitely we have students that are authors in our school that want to be authors. So they write books. We've had little young authors. We've had students that want to be architect. We have students that want to be robotic engineers. So it's not as much, but it diversifies. We have students that want to run their own business. So I have a dad that emailed me the other day. He was like, "Oh, my son wanted to do business." I was like, "He is taking business. Everybody in grade 11 is taking business. In grade 12, he'll take, you know." So there are those parents that, but every year we constantly have to meet with the parents and talk to them about the pathways, the different pathways that their sons have chosen. So with us, when the students are selecting their electives, they don't just select it on their own. We involve the parents into it. So we involve the parents to come in and say, "Hey, this is the elective that they've taken. These are what they can take after. If you want them to change it, this is what they can change." So they work very closely with our career counselor. We have designated career counselors. So even if the child wants to be a painter and the dad comes and is like, "Oh, why we have to," then we show him different pathways of what the artist can get them. It's not just them sitting in the street painting, but they can be an architect. There's so many different pathways that you can do. So it's all about also educating the parents that their child, because every parent fears that their child is not going to make it in life, quote unquote, not having the 6 core jobs, you know? So it's all about educating the parents as well.
Adwoa, what do you think like a school should look like in 2030?
Ooh, that's a good question. 2030 is not that far away, you know. It's only like 4.5 years. I think for like having more open spaces, you know, definitely technology is always going to be there. So instead of like having desktop computers, kids are going to probably have their iPads. Just making sure that there's more open portals for them to collaborate and having more tools for them to work with. I mean, nowadays, now education buildings have like glass. They have if they don't have the cement blocking them, but they have the glass and you can look through another door and you can open the door and two classes can collaborate together. I mean, there's more. Technology is not going away. I mean, our student, like I have students that take ICT, they take robotics, they use computers to do everything but to write because they still need to learn how to write and work on their membership and their math. But I'm just making sure that technology is safe for them to use, and we've taught them the critical thinking skills to use it effectively to develop and enhance and become better citizens, and not just use it to plagiarize and to score better, but to also make sure that they're using it safely and where it's going to help them become better citizens.
That's really interesting. I think the collaboration between human intelligence and machine intelligence, I think that's actually a skill that's, I think, rated by World Economic Forum to be like one of the key, skills in terms of surviving in this new age world. Especially, like when we do not end up learning how to use them in the right way, that's really good to have repercussions. I think there was this study by MIT where they talked about how there was this one group of students that they were so there was an assignment given out to students, and then there was this one group that were told to use ChatGPT to get it done.
Uh-huh.
There's another who were told that no, you're not going to use ChatGPT, but literally like going to complete the entire essay through by typing it manually, right? And turns out, they did that for about 3 months, and after that, they did these fMRI scans and all of that, these fancy things, and apparently the development of the brain like was far more substantive with someone who's not using GPT, and it was just using their mind. But like that, on that I was just thinking like, a tool like ChatGPT felt like it gave me supernatural powers, right?
Yeah.
And how is it that like someone using ChatGPT's brain is not developing? And like you said, at the beginning of the conversation, where if you ask a superficial question, that you give me an essay and tell me to like get this done, and I go to GPT, be like, hey, my miss is asking me to, write this essay. Can you do that for me? And then I
Yeah.
copy and paste and send it on the LMS. It's done, right? But that in itself is definitely like going to lead to those results where
Yeah.
your brain is not going to develop. But if I were like, I take the essay and I like, what do you think about this? And this topic about respiration or about magnetic forces or anything of that sort. And why do you think it is the way it is? And then and how did people think about this back in the day? And then what do people think about it now? And what are the problems in it? What are the gaps in it? And out of curiosity, plain curiosity. And that I think would just take them to a different leap altogether. I was just having this conversation yesterday with a student, and I was just telling him that this is the age of questioning. Like never has there been a time in history where you can ask a million questions and you can get a million answers right away. And I was like, if you're asking more questions to GPT, then you're actually in the right path,
Yes.
you know, because
Absolutely.
I'm like, if you asked a question, then before asking that question, it was almost like you're in that state of ignorance, right?
Yes.
And then I asked the question and I got my answer. And then there's this, I take a leap into that enlightenment sort of phase.
Uh-huh.
And if I happen to ask at about, let's say, 1,000 questions in the last 3 or 4 months, then my learning has been like
Accelerated.
exponential.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can just, teach students how to question, that'd be phenomenal that way.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Like, yeah, exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Because if they just use it like they use Google, like, oh, give me the direction of this or give me this image, you're not really expanding your mind. But it all depends. Like, it's another tool to find things out. So if you prompt it and if your brain is spewing those thoughts and you use it to find the answer as opposed to going to the library, then you are always working your mind. Just because it's there doesn't mean you stop reading, doesn't mean you stop researching. It's just another tool for you to research it. You shouldn't rely on it 100%. So that's why I always say the fundamental skills still needs to be taught to the
Right.
students. Yeah.
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 Absolutely. I was just telling this to one of my friends again that, it's really interesting when you go and really try to understand the dynamics of questioning, right? There are
Uh-huh.
different types of questions, and it's really interesting how people ask questions. It's almost like it becomes fascinating when you get behind the physics of questioning, right? And questions are the bedrock of innovation, right? And that way, I think it really gets interesting when students ask questions and like and they match that with while collaborating with tools like AI, it
Yeah.
gets really, really interesting. Ajra,
Yeah.
what's something you believed 10 years ago that you no longer do?
Just believe that you can do everything on your own. You can't think sometimes people think that I got this, I can do it on my own, but you can't. You need a team that you trust and they trust you best. And more being in leadership, I've learned that you do need other people in order for everything to work out. So whenever people start thinking, oh, I don't need nobody, I have this on my own, you always gotta think like, what happened? Who hurt you? And why is everybody getting punished? And what are your goals and how are you going to get there if you're only just going to do it by yourself? So you always need to work with somebody to get there. Even as a mentor, like you think you're going to do there, you always need a mentor to guide or to bounce ideas of. So no man or no woman is an island. So I quickly grew out of that.
I'm just intrigued to understand like in how does it work in schools? Like, do you think there's certain parts in the education sector or like it's specific to schools where where we happen to overestimate, and there's certain things in schools that we happen to underestimate? Would love to have your thoughts on that.
I think just stepping back out of the classroom and having a whole, my principal calls it the forest and the tree. So if
Ah,
you're
okay.
if you're in leadership, you look at the whole forest, right? Because you're responsible for everything. But if you're in the classroom as a teacher, you're the tree. You only look at what you want and what you want for your classroom, right? So I think you have to, like, just looking at it from a forest point of view. I think right now the biggest thing that we are really focusing on, it's about the well-being of the student. I think we also tend to forget that while students are coming to school, they're going through a transition of adolescence. Let's like if we both think about when we were 13 and 14 years old to the point where we got to 18, we're like, what the hell were we thinking at that age? And then we just think that they'll be fine. But then we tend to forget that when we were growing up, we didn't have the pressures of getting bullied online because we weren't online. We were outside playing with our friends. Then the kids have a pressure of being online. Like, and then what we're just talking about, kids using chat GPT to like commit suicide. If they're not committing suicide, they must be cutting themselves. They must be doing something. So the well-being, and I think that when we are dealing with adolescents, we almost need to just have the education come to the second front and look at how they are doing. Because if they're not talking to somebody they trust, who are they talking to? They're talking to somebody they don't know on the internet, and we don't know what's happening. So I think after the pandemic as well too, right? I think for the next 10, 15 years, well-being and the curriculum also needs to be side to side, not even just in the school. We need to educate the parents on students' well-being as well. Because sometimes you have students at home that don't want to come to school. Why don't they want to come to school? It's not because they're getting bullied at school. It's just maybe they're depressed. They just don't want to get out of the house. And the parents don't know how to help the child, right? So I think the well-being aspect is very, very big front. Whether you're in education or not in education, even both of us, our well-being. Sometimes when you wake up, you kind of have to check in yourself. It's like, how am I feeling today? Because if you're not your best, you kind of have to learn how to navigate to deal with the people that you are going to be surrounded with. But I think we also forget that children, especially when they're between the age of adolescence and teenage years, hormonally, they're imbalanced. They don't know how to regulate. They don't know how to communicate how they're feeling. The well-being is really, 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 really a big front of it. Forget about the teaching and learning. The child is not right. They're not going to listen to anything that's happening in the classroom. So well-being, whether in the classroom or outside the classroom, is very, very, it should be the number one important front for any adolescent, any human being, to be honest.
Yeah. The analogy that I gave about the forest and the tree, that's super, super cool. Being on the forest side of things, right? You're having this macro view of the entire forest. It's an interesting position to be in because it tells you, what do the trees look like and what are the problems the trees are facing and what are the problems, other elements of the forest are facing, right? And that just, intrigues me to understand, like, what do you think are the pain points of, like the school, like when it comes to students and teachers? What are they, what challenges do they deal with?
Well, like I said, the students, they need to learn how to to me, just looking at it from the whole, their feeling and how they navigate their hormones. And the teachers, I think what we need to do is step back as the educators and learn to adapt and come in the front of how are we going to deal with this issue that we're having, as opposed to just, oh, they're destructive. Why are they being destructive? I think that's the first front that we're tackling right now. I think for our school at the moment, yes, we worked on the teaching and learning, we're moving along, but we're kind of coming back and be like, okay, let's look at the students' well-being. And if we get the well-being right, then the teaching and learning within side by side will move smoothly in the classroom, right? And the behavior and everything, it's never going to go away, but we'll understand it more and we'll have strategies and give the child strategies of how to cope within the classroom, and the teachers on how to support the students. I think with the teachers also, when it comes, is giving them more time so they can practice their pedagogy. Because sometimes, like this year, last year, I did a lot of whole school PD. This year, we're doing professional development based on the subject. So the subject themselves can have PDs that is aligned to their subject and how they can grow. Because sometimes when you do stuff whole school across over 100 teachers, who's really listening? Let's be honest. But if you do it based on small groups of 20 teachers, 15 teachers, 18 teachers, you get more out of them. Just giving them more time to also get professional development where they can grow as a teacher. Because if we're not investing in our teachers as well, then we're not going to get 100% into them, out of them, sorry.
To teachers, like face, I was reading this statistics, like I think it's 44% of teachers quit in 5 years because of the lot many challenges that teachers worldwide face, right?
Mm.
Do you think like a teacher, the main challenges of the teacher, like is it prep time? What is the major part of the time goes into?
I think the major is just, okay, it's like it's a copulations of things, but it's like the prep time, the pedagogy timing, like not having, like it goes back to not having classroom management. I think a lot of teachers they're quitting their first year because they don't have classroom management, right? Because when you go into, when I went to teachers college and teaching about classroom management. They taught me about how to plan lessons and go and teach. I had to figure out the classroom management on my own. Like, I remember my first practicum, the teacher, he was like, honey, forget about the lesson plans that you have. You need to build relationship with these kids. Because if you don't build the relationship with these kids, they're not going to listen to you. And thank God he gave me that week to do that, because building the relationship with those students helped me a lot. Because when you build the relationship with those students, it cuts your prep time in half because you know what their interests are. You get what I mean? So therefore, you're teaching the skills, but the activity that you're giving them is based on their interests. So it creates an engagement within the classroom. So if you don't have your classroom management, you don't have the relationship built. And then on top of that too is the pressures of planning and blah, 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 blah. So the underlining is building relationship. Like, and then some teachers too, when you teach secondary and you have 4 or 5 classes, you have like 120 students. How are you going to get to know all of them? As opposed to if you are a primary teacher and you only have that one class, right? So almost have to give our middle and secondary teachers time to develop those relationship with those students, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that that element of building relationships and at the same time, there's so many, aspects that a teacher is channelizing, their energies into it, and can imagine how challenging that must be. Joa, if you were to, if not for education, like, would you think you would have become? Which, field you think you might have gone into?
Believe it or not, my first degree is in law and history. I was going to my undergrad. I did my undergrad at Carleton University, and it was a law with a concentration in business law. I really wanted to get into law because I wanted to help people. I was watching law. I used to watch a lot of Law and Order, and I'm like, you know what? All these criminals, somebody needs to get them out. Really wanted to help people. If I like now looking back at it, I would be in law, but it would be more on advocating for like child right, child well-being, and the right to education. So more on the front of still advocating for students, but I'm making sure that regardless of where you are in this world, you have the adequate right of education, at least till you're done secondary school.
And if there was, and this bringing me to my last and final question
Mhm.
for the day. Uh, if there was like one advice that you would have given to your younger self, what would that have been?
That everything works out. It doesn't matter the struggles, where you're meant to be, you will be. And the trials and tribulations that you go through is just part of preparing you to get to where you need to be.
Amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Ajwa. Really appreciate that you took out your time, especially in a weekend, and really appreciate and hope to get another calls and look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you so much. I'm honored that you actually asked me to. Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we get to do this again in the future.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.